Dungeons & Dragons has no shortage of spells. Some of them are good and some of them are not so good, but I don't think that there's any spell in the game that has quite the allure and the mystique around it as Wish. Whispered in hushed tomes among wizards, this spell transcends mortal limits, offering a glimpse into the realm of gods and the potential to alter reality itself. I think it goes without saying that Wish is an incredible spell, only made more mysterious by the various limitations that surround it and how those have evolved and changed over time. Countless adventurers have surely been plagued by unfortunate wording and ill-conceived dreams, but how exactly did we arrive where we are today? This is the history of Wish. The first time that we see Wish appear in Dungeons & Dragons is actually way back in original D&D in 1974, though it doesn't appear as a spell, but rather as part of an item. Buried in the Monsters and Treasures booklet, you will find the Ring of Three Wishes, and after reading the text, it is immediately clear that although you can certainly see the origins of what would become modern-day Wish, it had some interesting quirks to it. The text reads, as with any wishes, the wishes granted by the ring must be of limited power in order to maintain balance in the game. This requires the utmost discretion on the part of the referee. Typically, greedy characters will request more wishes, for example, as one of their wishes. The referee should then put that character into an endless closed time loop, moving him back to the time when he first obtained the wish ring. Again, a wish for some powerful item could be fulfilled without benefit to the one wishing. I wish for a mirror of life trapping, and the referee then places the character inside one, which is all his own. Wishes that unfortunate adventures had never happened should be granted. Clues can be given when wishes for powerful items or great treasures are made. What stands out to me is that the vast majority of the text of this item is devoted to explaining to a dungeon master, or referee as they were known, just how hard they should be screwing over their party if they try and get away with a quote-unquote greedy wish. And while you can still see some of this element of the caution for care wording in the 5e version of the spell, they aren't so hell-bent on trying to ruin a player's day anymore. This is largely typical of Gary Gygax's style and was part of why he created the famously deadly Tomb of Horrors, specifically to kill the characters of his players who boasted of being unkillable. You can see even another example of this in the item listed directly below the Ring of Three Wishes, another ring called Delusion, which is specifically described as something thrown in to fool players. For what it's worth, I have always found the importance of the wording of the wish to be a really fun element of the spell, though I'm just less of a fan of directly spelling out ways of killing your party members. Aside from the incredibly adversarial tone that the Ring of Three Wishes uses in its description, there isn't a whole lot of guidance to actually help dungeon masters out. This was also typical of early D&D. All we really know is that the wish had to be of limited power in order to maintain balance of the game. They emphasize the importance of the discretion of the referee in this situation. It seems clear that they wanted to create a spell that worked well beyond the limits of the game, but at the same time still be confined by them. It says that wishing something had never happened should be granted, but that clues should be granted when looking for a powerful magical item or treasure, which is quite interesting, as I'd argue that undoing a moment in the past can often be much more useful than a magic item, but clearly the definitions of power was very different in original D&D as compared to today. We wouldn't see Wish make its first appearance as a spell until the first supplement of original D&D was released the following year, which was Greyhawk. Greyhawk brought a lot of new things to the game, but most importantly for us, it brought Wish in spell form, not just once, but twice. A new 7th level spell was made available to Magic users known as Limited Wish. The text reads, a spell which alters reality past, present, or future, but only within limited bounds. It cannot create or bring any form of treasure, for example, and only a portion of a wish might actually occur. It then continues to reference the Ring of Three Wishes as for further information. Limited Wish provides us with some bounds with which the spell can exist. Firstly, it tells us that the spell can alter the reality of past, present, or future. This is not only a great distinction, but it also helps us get a better grasp of what a wish is actually capable of. We also know that Limited Wish cannot bring any form of treasure, so this also puts a limit on what a player might even consider asking for, which can help prevent some other unfortunate circumstances from arising. Also in Greyhawk, we would see Wish make its first appearance as a 9th level spell. The text reads, the same spell as found in the Ring of Wishes. Using a wish spell, however, requires so great a conjuration that the user will be unable to do anything further magically for from 2 to 8 days. This is essentially just a worse version of the effect generated by the Ring of Three Wishes. No additional guidance for wishes has been put forward, except now, for the first time, we get to see the introduction of a mainstay of the spell, that being that there's a penalty for casting it. This version is particularly punishing as it prevents you from doing anything magical for the next 2 to 8 days, which we can assume was probably just 2d4. This is a pretty brutal side effect, but one that would largely continue on until the modern day. Next up is Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 1st Edition. Here we see the return of both Limited Wish and Wish as spells, and while their effects are largely similar to original D&D, there are some noteworthy modifications. The text reads, "A Limited Wish is a very potent but difficult spell. It will fulfill literally, but only partially or for a limited duration, the utterance of the spellcaster. Thus, the actuality of the past, present, or future might be altered, but possibly only for the magic user, unless the wording of the limited wish is most carefully stated in some limited manner. The use of a limited wish will not substantially change major realities, nor will it bring forth wealth or experience merely by asking. This spell can, for example, restore some hit points or all hit points for a limited duration lost by the magic user. It can reduce opponent hit probabilities or damage, it can increase duration of some magical effect, it can cause a creature to be favorably disposed to the spellcaster, and so on. The limited wish can possibly give a minor clue to some treasure or magic item. Greedy desires will usually end in disaster for the wisher. The first thing worth noting is the stark contrast to the original. While there is mention of greedy desires that will usually end in disaster for the wisher, it is at least relegated to one small sentence at the end of the spell rather than being the majority of it. They also don't spend multiple sentences going into detail about how you can punish your players. A welcome change. And people think D&D only got soft in 5e. Anyway, more importantly, this is the first time that we start to see actual parameters form around the spell. Regaining hit points, adjusting hit probabilities, adjusting damage, increasing the duration of magical effects, and so on. We finally have some actual guidance, however limited, on what is possible with a limited wish. There is still a heavy emphasis on the correct and accurate wording used when making the wish, and this is emphasized where it says it will fulfill literally, as in to suggest that the wisher should be very careful about their word choice so as to not end up in some form of infinite time loop just as before. Wish in AD&D 1st Edition also received some wording updates. The wish spell is a more potent version of the limited wish. If it is used to alter reality with respect to hit points sustained by a party, to bring a dead character to life, or to escape from a difficult situation by lifting the spellcaster and his or her party from one place to another, it will not cause the magic user any disability. Other forms of wishes, however, will cause the spellcaster to be weak, a -3 on strength, and require 2 to 8 days of bed rest due to the stresses the wish placed upon time, space, and his or her body. Regardless of what is being wished for, the exact terminology of the wish spell is likely to be carried through. This discretionary power of the referee is necessary in order to maintain game balance, as wishing another character dead would be grossly unfair. For example, your DM might well advance the spellcaster to a future period where the object is no longer alive, in effect putting the wishing character out of the campaign. Again, here we get some specifics for what the spell is capable of doing, and they've expanded it quite a bit as compared to Limited Wish. We can bring dead characters back to life now, or instantly teleport the party to safety. The scope of what is possible is starting to be defined while still leaving plenty of room for creativity on the player's part. We continue to see the physical strain that the spell imposes, requiring 2 to 8 days of bed rest, but this is the first time that we see a reduction in an ability score as a result of casting the spell, the -3 to strength. It's worth noting that we also see the return of some spicy ways to deal with particularly petulant player characters. Wording is incredibly important, but I suppose such is the nature of particularly powerful and fickle magic. Regardless though, we are starting to see the trend emerge here, where some things can be safely wished for while others may impose some additional disadvantages. Moving on to Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd Edition, while most things are largely the same, there have been some notable updates to both Limited Wish and Wish. Limited Wish is still a 7th level spell and reads as follows. The Limited Wish is a very potent but difficult spell. It will fulfill literally, but only partially or for a limited duration, the utterance of the spellcaster. Thus, the actuality of the past, present, or future might be altered, but possibly only for the wizard if the wording of the spell is most careful in some limited manner. The use of Limited Wish will not substantially change major realities, nor will it bring wealth or experience merely by asking. The spell can, for example, restore some hit points or all hit points for a limited duration lost by the wizard. It can reduce opponent hit probabilities or damage, increase the duration of some magical effect, cause a creature to be favorably disposed to the spellcaster, mimic a spell of 7th level or less, and so on. Greedy desires usually end in disaster for the wisher. Casting time is based on the time spent preparing the wording for the spell. Clever players decide what they want to say before using the spell. Normally, the casting time is 1 round, most of it being taken up by deciding what to say. Casting the spell ages the caster 1 year per 100 years of regular lifespan. This version of Limited Wish is very similar to what we saw from 1st edition, though there are 2 important changes. Firstly, we see the specific inclusion of the ability to mimic spells of 7th level or less. Though I'm not actually sure, I wonder if this was done as it was maybe one of the more common uses of the spell in the past, so they instead opted to codify it into the rules. This is an effect that is still carried forward to this day, and we get to see its origins here in 2nd edition. The other big change is the aging side effect. The caster ages 1 year per 100 years of regular lifespan, so if you're something like an elf, you might age 5 years by casting the spell, while the human might age 1 year. The physical toll of casting the spell are really setting in now. As for Wish itself, it's still a 9th level spell in 2nd edition, but it's nearly identical to what was printed in 1st edition, with the exception of the fact that it now also includes an aging element. When you cast Wish, the caster ages 5 years. This one isn't based on typical lifespan, it's just always 5 years. One interesting exclusion is that it has no mention of being able to duplicate spells of a lower level, despite that being in Limited Wish. Given that it describes itself as a more potent version of Limited Wish, though I think it would be safe to say that it would be fair game. Whether it would just be 7th level spells or if it included 8th or even 9th would probably be up to the DM though. With 3rd edition and 3.5, things get a lot more specific. The version I'm going to be reading comes from 3.5, so if you've never read this before, prepare yourself. A Limited Wish lets you create nearly any type of effect. For example, a Limited Wish can do any of the following things. Duplicate any sorcerer or wizard spell of 6th level or lower, provided the spell is not of a school prohibited to you. Duplicate any other spell of 5th level or lower, provided the spell is not of a school prohibited to you. Duplicate any sorcerer or wizard spell of 5th level or lower, even if it's of a prohibited school. Duplicate any other spell of 4th level or lower, even if it's of a prohibited school. Undo the harmful effects of many spells, such as Gaius, Quest, or Insanity. Produce any other effect whose power level is in line with the above effects, such as a single creature automatically hitting on its next attack or taking a -7 penalty on its next saving throw. A duplicated spell allows saving throws and spell resistance as normal, but the save DC is for a 7th level spell. When a Limited Wish duplicates a spell that has an XP cost, you may pay that cost or 300 XP, whichever is more. When a Limited Wish spell duplicates a spell with a material component that costs more than 1,000 gold pieces, you must provide that component. That was a lot. Firstly, it's clear that the main focus of the spell has shifted to spell duplication, something that we saw first introduced in 2nd edition. Now, if you've only played 5e, the idea of spell schools being prohibited to you may sound like a wild concept. I won't go too into the weeds on this since it's beyond the scope of this video, but essentially, depending on the spell school that you specialized in, things like evocation, illusion, conjuration, etc., there would be certain spell schools that were prohibited to you and you could not learn spells within those schools. If you want to know more, I do go into some more depth on this in my History of Wizard video, which I'll leave linked below and in the end cards. Anyway, while they do provide some additional options outside of spell duplication, it's clear that that is the main focus. Something else that may catch 5e players off guard is that XP is also a spell component. This is exactly what it sounds like. You can literally spend some of your earned XP in the casting of the spell. You can't spend so much that you would drop a level. Instead, if you don't have enough available, you just can't cast the spell. Alright, if you thought Limited Wish was a lot, really prepare yourself for 9th level Wish in 3.5. Wish is the mightiest spell a wizard or sorcerer can cast. By simply speaking aloud, you can alter reality to better suit you. Even Wish, however, has its limits. A Wish can produce any of the following effects. Duplicate any wizard or sorcerer spell of 8th level or lower, provided the spell is not of a school prohibited to you. Duplicate any spell of 6th level or lower, provided that the spell is not of a school prohibited to you. Duplicate any wizard or sorcerer spell of 7th level or lower, even if it's of a prohibited school. Duplicate any other spell of 5th level or lower, even if it's of a prohibited school. Undo the harmful effects of many other spells, such as Gaius, Quest, or Insanity. Create a non-magical item of up to 25,000 gold pieces in value. Create a magic item or add to the powers of an existing magic item. Grant a creature a +1 inherent bonus to an ability score. 2 to 5 wish spells cast in immediate succession can grant a creature a +2 to +5 inherent bonus to an ability score. 2 wishes for a +2 inherent bonus, 3 for a +3 inherent bonus, and so on. Inherent bonuses are instantaneous, so they cannot be dispelled. Note, an inherent bonus may not exceed +5 for a single ability score, and inherent bonuses to a particular ability score do not stack, so only the best one applies. Remove injuries and afflictions. A single wish can aid one creature per caster level, and all subjects are cured of the same kind of affliction. For example, you could heal all the damage you and your companions have taken, or remove all poison effects from everyone in the party, but not do both with the same wish. A wish can never restore the experience point lost from casting a spell, or the level or constitution lost from being raised from the dead. Revive the dead. A wish can bring a dead creature back to life by duplicating the resurrection spell. A wish can revive a dead creature whose body has been destroyed, but the task takes 2 wishes, one to recreate the body and another to infuse the body with life again. A wish cannot prevent a character who was brought back to life from losing an experience level. Transport travelers. A wish can lift one creature per caster level from anywhere on any plane and place those creatures anywhere else on any plane regardless of local conditions. An unwilling target gets a will save to negate the effect, and spell resistance if any applies. Undo misfortune. A wish can undo a single recent event. The wish forces a reroll of any roll made within the last round, including your last turn. Reality reshapes itself to accommodate the new result. For example, a wish could undo an opponent's successful save, a foe's successful critical hit, either the attack or the critical roll, a friend's failed save, and so on. The reroll, however, may be as bad or worse than the original roll. An unwilling target gets a will save to negate the effect, and spell resistance if any applies. You may try to use a wish to produce a greater effect than these, but doing so is dangerous. Such a wish gives the DM the opportunity to fulfill your request without fulfilling it completely. The wish may pervert your intent into a literal but undesirable fulfillment, or only a partial fulfillment. For example, wishing for a Staff of the Magi might get you instantly transported to the presence of the staff's current owner. Wishing to be immortal could get you imprisoned in a hidden extra-dimensional space, as by an imprisonment spell where you could live indefinitely. Duplicated spells allow saves and spell resistance as normal, but save DCs are for 9th level spells. Material component. When a wish duplicates a spell with a material component that costs more than 10,000 gold pieces, you must provide that component. XP cost. The minimum XP cost for casting wish is 5,000 XP. When a wish duplicates a spell that has an XP cost, you must pay 5,000 XP or that cost, whichever is more. When a wish creates or improves a magic item, you must pay twice the normal XP cost for crafting or improving the item, plus an additional 5,000 XP. We've really swung in the opposite direction when compared to 1st and 2nd editions, which were so vague in their wording. 3.5 has gone out of their way to really spell everything out. Again, the focus of Wish has become spell duplication, though it does offer plenty of other alternatives such as the creation of magical items, improvements to bonuses, curing the party of illnesses, and a whole lot more. While 3.5 has dealt away with the physical toll that casting Wish had in previous editions, it has instead replaced it with some significant material costs, including XP, which can and are probably often more detrimental to the player anyway. They've returned with some creative punishments for greedy and not careful players as well. To me, while I do appreciate the specificity that the 3.5 version of Wish brought, it feels a bit too mechanical and detracts from some of the whimsy of the spell itself as far as I'm concerned. For as chaotic and insane as the previous versions of the spell were, in a weird way, I almost prefer them. Moving on to 4th edition, well, like most things in 4e, it didn't follow any of the standards that the game had established. Neither Wish or Limited Wish exist in the game. Player characters don't have any way of casting them on their own. The only way wishes can be granted are potentially through genies, but even that would be an extremely uncommon occurrence, though could potentially lead to more powerful wishes for players given their rarity. Finally, we arrive at 5th edition. This is probably the most clear and easy to use version of the spell so far, as are many things in 5e. The text reads, "Wish is the mightiest spell a mortal creature can cast. By simply speaking aloud, you can alter the very foundation of reality in accord with your desires." The basic use of the spell is to duplicate any other spell of 8th level or lower. You don't need to meet any requirements in that spell, including costly components. The spell simply takes effect. Alternatively, you can create one of the following effects of your choice. You create one object of up to 25,000 gold pieces in value that isn't a magic item. The object can be no more than 300 feet in any dimension, and it appears in an unoccupied space that you can see on the ground. You allow up to 20 creatures that you can see to regain all hit points, and you end all effects on them as described in the Greater Restoration spell. You grant up to 10 creatures that you can see resistance to a damage type that you choose. You grant up to 10 creatures that you can see immunity to a single spell or other magical effect for 8 hours. For instance, you could make yourself and all your companions immune to a Lich's life drain attack. You undo a single recent event by forcing a reroll of any roll made within the last round, including your last turn. Reality reshapes itself to accommodate the new result. For example, a wish spell could undo an opponent's successful save, a foe's critical hit, or a friend's failed save. You can force the reroll to be made with advantage or disadvantage, and you can choose whether to use the reroll or the original roll. You might be able to achieve something beyond the scope of the above examples. State your wish to the GM as precisely as possible. The GM has great latitude in ruling what occurs in such an instance. The greater the wish, the greater the likelihood that something goes wrong. The spell might simply fail, the effect you desire might only be partially achieved, or you might suffer some unforeseen consequences as a result of how you worded the wish. For example, wishing that a villain were dead might propel you forward in time to a period when that villain is no longer alive, effectively removing you from the game. Similarly, wishing for a legendary magic item or artifact might instantly transport you to the presence of that item's current owner. The stress of casting the spell to produce any effect other than duplicating another spell weakens you. After enduring that stress, each time you cast a spell until you finish a long rest, you take 1d10 necrotic damage per level of that spell. This damage can't be reduced or prevented in any way. In addition, your strength drops to 3 if it isn't 3 or lower already for 2d4 days. For each of those days that you spend resting and doing nothing more than light activity, your remaining recovery time decreases by 2 days. Finally, there is a 33% chance that you are unable to cast Wish ever again if you suffer this stress. The 5e version of Wish has more or less incorporated many of the best elements of the spell throughout various editions and combined them into one. Spell duplication has remained and is far more streamlined than in 3.5, largely due to the fact that spell schools have lost most of their significance now. In 5e, when you use the spell to do something other than duplicating another spell, instead of the -3 to strength that we saw from 2nd edition, instead here it just sets your strength score to 3, which is a -4, which it also does for 2d4 days. Again, harkening back to that physical exhaustion that casting the spell in previous editions caused. Interestingly, another possible detriment has been added to the spell. If you use Wish to do something other than duplicating a spell, there is a 33% chance that you can simply never cast Wish again. Overall, I have to say that the 5e version of Wish is probably my favorite. It's extremely powerful, it provides guidance, but still leaves a lot of open-ended room for DMs to make rulings about how the spell resolves. The downsides to casting Wish, especially the damage taken per spell level after, and the 33% chance to never be able to cast it again, also make it feel like it's something that shouldn't be constantly used to just obtain benefits, as the possibility of losing the ability and taking constant damage are very real. A stark contrast to the 3.5 version, where the text explicitly mentions consecutive castings of the spell. Wish is such a fun and interesting spell, and it's been really cool to dive down this rabbit hole and dig into the different versions of it from the past. Let me know if this was something you enjoyed, and if so, what other spell or feature histories you'd want me to dive into next. Subscribe to help me reach my goal of 10,000 subscribers by September, but otherwise, take care.